Okay, everyone, let's start our session today. So my name is Isabella Batistella Spindola, and I will be your host today. Besides being a member of the Water Youth Network, working closely with the Water Governance Group, I'm a PhD candidate in Human Geography at the University of São Paulo, and I'm a past fellow, developing research about transboundary water governance and management, as well as hydropolitics, and focus on South America. And once again, thank you for joining us today to the side event of the night session of the meeting of the parties to the Water Convention. And please be aware that our session is being recorded, and especially to allow others who are not able to attend to it later. And if you do not want to be identifiable in the recording, please feel free to turn off your mic and your webcam and participate in the event via chat. And just some ground rules for today. Please remember to mute yourself, send your questions, your comments through the chat, and if possible, please identify yourself, sharing basic information such as your full name, your country, and what you're working with. Okay? Our side event today will focus on civil society voices and local communities in transboundary waters. In recent years, the public interest for participating in the decision-making process regarding transboundary waters has grown steadily. And this makes a lot of sense since transboundary water covers more than half of the world's surface and are home to approximately 40% of the world's population. So the management of this shared water is complex since actions taken by one European state can impact negatively in the other. And it's important that we should think that unilateral decisions are a risk to transboundary water, as well as the lack of inclusion in decision-making process. So with our session today, we want to highlight that all the basic stakeholders should be part of the decision-making and management process in transboundary waters. And we also argue that the lack of participation decrease the effectiveness and the legitimacy of the decisions that are taken, not only by river basin organization, but as well by riparian countries. And we also argue that public participation can be beneficial for the governance of transboundary water resources. And this should be reflected in water law and policymaking. And we know that it's not easy to achieve this, but we hope that with the examples that we are going to show today with the panelists, with the speakers, we can provide a short overview on how to do that. And our discussion will restart with the presentation of Alissa Alfut and Viviana Franco. Alissa is a doctoral candidate at the IHDELF Institute for Water Education, and she focuses on multi-scalar hydropolitics on transboundary water quality. And Alissa also supports the water, peace and security and water diplomacy initiatives. And Viviana Franco is a researcher and framework developer for replication and upscale of large-scale nature-based solution. They will share their experience and discuss about transboundary water opportunities and challenges in the Rhine River Basin, as well as the role played by youth in the process. After their presentation, we will have Alice Tenta. She's the Vice President of All About Wash Association, also founder of the Safe Drop Group and Executive Director of United Engineers SARS. Alice will discuss the benefits of water entrepreneurs on transboundary water conservation, focus on the case of the Cameroon. After Europe and Africa, we will jump to South America to discuss public participation in the La Plata Basin. I will be sharing some cases within this basin based on programs and actions carried out with the Framework program. And we will also receive Henrique Castro Barbosa from Brazil. Henrique is a geography graduate student at the University of São Paulo, and he's currently working on undergraduate research that is funded by the Brazilian National Council for Scientific and Technological Development about the transboundary water management in the La Plata Basin. He will share his insights about civil actors' roles on transboundary water management between Brazil and Uruguay. And to conclude our presentation, we will have Tim Newton, who will give an overview of public participation with the Water Convention. And besides leading our water governance group at the Water Youth Network, Tim is also a consultant at GOPA Infra, an independent international consultancy that is rendering engineer and consulting services for infrastructure development worldwide. And concerning our agenda for today, we'll have the presentation by the speakers, and then we will have the breakout rooms. And after that, we'll have opportunity to share our reflections and way forwards and the closing for the session. And I would like to ask Lisa and Viviana to start the presentation. This virtual stage is yours. And just remember that you have 10 minutes, and I will let you know when your time is up. And everyone that is participating in the session, please feel free to send your comments and questions in the chat. We will be collecting them and share with the speakers. And remember to say your name and where you're from.
Thank you, Isabella, for the nice introduction. And hello, everyone, and thank you for being with us today. Isabella, can you please
yes.
sharing? Yeah, thank you. Okay, I hope everyone can see my slides already. So yeah, my name is Viviana Franco, and today I'm representing Youth for the Rhine. And we are going to talk about the Transboundary Youth Network. So first, I would like to give you some background information about the Rhine River Basin. This is a transboundary river, which is shared by the United States in Europe, making this river basin one of the largest in Europe and also in the world. The area is around 200,000 square kilometers. And as the rest of Europe and the rest of the world, it's facing nowadays major societal issues related to climate change adaptation, affecting water, food, and energy. So having this in mind, Youth for the Rhine was founded in December 2020 in the Netherlands, and it's a youth-led initiative intended to connect young multidisciplinary professionals, students, to the river basin, and also like different stakeholders, and co-create ideas for a sustainable environment, actions, and climate adaptation. Also, we are aiming to inspire international rights committees in the European Commission and local authorities in the river basin with a multidisciplinary perspective. Nowadays, we are over 60 international members from different 5 continents, contributing to this incredible initiative. And we are also based all of these projects following this co-creation model that we call here in the Netherlands the ABCD model. And this is a bottom-up approach. So basically how we think that this kind of issues or challenges should be addressed is by starting from the end users, the people, how we actually nominate the problems, the wishes, in this case, focus in young people. So how we then can be as a civil society, the connection or the bridge with the authorities and as well like with the solutions that we call it business, and then we can be all part of this innovative change, and how we can tackle the climate change that affects water, food, and energy, what we actually are focused nowadays. So this is the way that we are seeing it. It's a co-creation model, and we aim to approach the different challenges that we are having as a young generation to issues like a transboundary that can be also interpreted in water, food, and energy. And just to let you know a little bit more about the structure Youth for the Rhine, these 60 members that we are having at the moment are distributed in 4 different committees. We have the pilot project that is focused on the water quality in the Rhine, how people have the perspective about the water in the Rhine in different states. Then we have the online youth consultation, which is aiming like to get all this knowledge from the young professionals to understand what are the issues that we are having across the Rhine. And then we have the communication and outreach committee that is in charge of basically like to spread the voice. And then we have the fundraising and partnership committee that is in charge of spread like the voice in case in that sense, like getting partnerships and growing as a project with the different collaborations. Now I give a voice to my colleague, Alisa.
Thank you, Viviana, and good morning, everyone. My name is Alyssa Offit. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to elaborate a bit more on the work that we do and how it is both tailored for transboundary systems as well as youth engagement in these systems. And so as Viviana mentioned, one of our primary goals is to elevate the voices of youth in a transboundary basin over different water issues. And we've taken several approaches to do that. So do you mind hitting the button, Viviana? First of all, we've sought to understand what the perspectives are of youth through very simple means. We've created a water quality survey as part of our pilot project to understand how youth perceive and are impacted by water quality in the basin. And this is a way for us to consolidate perspectives that we can share with decision makers and really elevate to a decision maker platform. We also work to support awareness raising. For instance, within our pilot project, we're seeking to do water quality outreach through different online videos, different sampling campaigns, and potential collaborations with different partners to do education activities. And we think that this is really useful for stakeholders in the broader basin because it helps to empower stakeholders to share their experiences with a shared language of decision makers, which is especially relevant for youth that maybe don't feel that they have value of their experiences, even though they are, because they don't feel as comfortable sharing that. But as well, it also supports potential accountability through the sampling that we're doing to help hold our decision makers accountable to the regulations and conventions that they participate in. And finally, we seek to really build this broad network of youth throughout the Rhine Basin and create a platform for exchange of experiences and lessons learned. And this is often done through our dialogue platform or the online youth consultation that Viviana mentioned. And you can see an example on the right of one of our meetings where we have that kind of platform for discussion. And this serves a really important role of building potential coalitions throughout the Transboundary Basin, which can strengthen the voices of youth as a broader stakeholder group. It also gives opportunities for adaptive learning through different experiences that youth share. And on top of that, it serves as a means to engage in track 3 diplomacy of building relationships throughout the basin that can really support fostering collaboration in transboundary systems. Now, you can go to the next one, thank you. That's of course not without its challenges and also opportunities for us to strengthen as a group. I think one thing that is clear and we've consistently found is that there's dispersed voices of youth at a transboundary level. Often youth engagement gets limited to one participant, and it is quite hard to capture the nuance and the broad experiences that are held by people in the basin. And so we're trying to address this by creating dialogue platforms and making sure that the way we share this information gives that broad discussion and that broader picture that we're seeing from the youth we work with. We also are seeking to strengthen our stakeholder group. Right now, we primarily work with water-related youth, and we really would like to expand beyond the water sector to also especially work within the water, food, energy nexus and have stakeholders, youth stakeholders that represent these different areas as well, to give a bit more of a holistic network. In addition to that, connections take time. As Viviana mentioned, we're focusing on a bottom-up approach. And so we are currently within the first phase of our project and are really seeking to build relationships and understanding with the youth throughout the basin. And this, of course, is to build legitimacy as a group that youth can coalesce around, to build relationships with other youth organizations, and to really strengthen our position when we say we're seeking to elevate youth. And as a result of that, a lot of our work has been in that de-engagement, so with youth, and we haven't taken the steps yet to really elevate voices and share that with decision makers. So that's something that we're seeking to do as we move into phase 2 this November, which will bring challenges that we are looking to address right now. We're talking about in our committee, and is something that I think would be an excellent opportunity to discuss later in the session today, including what level of governance do we want to engage in? We certainly want to work on a transboundary level. Does that mean transboundary institutions? Does that mean local governments in different countries? And figuring out where we can be most effective within the system for youth advocacy, especially given the challenges of navigating different transboundary dynamics. And then finally, one thing that I want to highlight as not really a challenge, but an opportunity is we have a huge network of youth already in its infancy, and then see a lot of enthusiasm of youth. And so I think that's one of our greatest strengths. Although we're moving into phase 2 and still seeking to really elevate the voices of youth, there's a lot of enthusiasm behind it. And as Viviana mentioned, we have members in 5 different continents. And so we see that demand in other basins as well. So it both enriches our project in sharing ideas throughout different parts of the world, but also an opportunity to expand beyond for other basins and greater youth advocacy. And with that, I know we don't have time for questions, but if you have any, please feel free to write them in the chat or to contact us through any of these platforms, our website, social media, or email directly. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thanks.
Thank you, Alice and Viviana. That was a wonderful presentation. And if you guys want to know more about the youth for the Rhine project, they already shared their information in the chat. They shared their contacts, so please send them a message and talk to them. Okay, so from Europe, we'll go to Cameroon with Alice. Alice, I'm going to share a presentation, and then just let me know when you want me to change the slide. Okay.
Good morning, everyone, here, and welcome to Youth and Civil Society in Transboundary Waters. Of course, I'll be talking on the benefits of water and / ecopreneurs in transboundary water conservation. That's the case of Cameroon. In Cameroon, we are made up of 360 municipalities. Isabel, can you take the next slide? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're made up of 360 municipalities, most of which, that's more than 300, you have their names from water bodies. And these water bodies are most of which supply not only Cameroon, but most of the transboundary waters around. And for that, Cameroon is part of 6 water bodies, transboundary water bodies. The next, Isabel, please. Yeah, as you can see from this slide, we are part of 6 transboundary water bodies. That all the 360 rivers running around the country are really richly endowed, and they supply all these transboundary water bodies. And that's just example, the Lake Chad, which everybody knows, the Niger River. Then we have the Congo. Those are the most common, and Cameroon highly supply them. So you can understand that in Cameroon, conserving transboundary waters, first of all, intends conserving the river waters around us. That we can go and say we're conserving the transboundary water bodies, when we cannot conserve our waters, because most of those waters we have within the countries supply those transboundary water bodies, meaning that we really, really have a big work to do. But of course, the next slide, please. Formerly or previously, in the about 10 years ago, was mostly the government that handled most and nearly all transboundary and water issues in Cameroon, that's conserving and restoring them. And that system didn't work. So in the recent years, more and more youth took up, and civil society took up the charge to really engage into the environment, because we have really seen the different issues we face with the dying and diminishing water bodies around us. We have seen the effects of polluting the waters, the inundations during the rains, the flooding and everything. So youth came up and decided, okay, in civil society, that we too need to tackle. Whereas one of the best ways to tackle without disturbing the government or without having come into clash with the different functions was, of course, entrepreneurship. The reason why we came up, in fact, many youth and civil societies came out with different companies, such as Aname Recycling. Next slide, Isabel, please. Such as Aname Recycling, which have up to date, yeah, thank you. Aname Recycling is a company that was created in 2016 and now is found in 3 different areas. That's in Cameroon, 2 localities, the main urban setting, Douala and Yaoundé, then out of the country in Belgium. And today they have collected more than 73 million bottles from rivers. As you can see, this is a river just infested with bottles, water bottles only. And you can imagine how hazardous that can be, because it leaves from there and it moves, I mean, the bottles leave from there and they move gradually to the transboundary waters, meaning that we say oceans are polluted with bottles, transboundary water bodies are polluted with bottles, but they come from the interlands, they come from our rivers. So we thought that one of the best ways to treat those transboundary water issues was first treating our internal water bodies, that's the rivers. And here, every year and every day, Name Recycling does that. That's one of the most prominent in Cameroon. We have other companies such as Madiba. They pick up bottles same way and they use it to make boats. That's boats using bottles. And they sell it back to the community. That's to fishermen who use them to fish. Instead of cutting down trees in order to construct new boats and canoes, they rather use bottles, which is a form of recycling also. So it forms a whole ecosystem and the circular economy on its own. Then we have other companies such as, next slide, please, Isabel. Yeah, we have companies like Desalytics. Rather, here, Desalytics help to treat waters. They help in water treatment and water restoration, because there's some equipments that we needed. We saw that we need to treat some water bodies. There are some equipments we needed. At times, importing them becomes expensive, or little community projects was hard to find equipments. But then they come up and they said, okay, we can supply products and do research in order to see which of the natural technologies can be used in order to treat our water bodies. Same as United Engineers, who also they work in river and water restoration. So that's just a few examples of civil society and youth entrepreneurs we have within Cameroon that really help up in conserving our water bodies. As I said, here we really believe that conserving and preserving transboundary water bodies, we first of all need to preserve and conserve our rivers, because Cameroon is one of the countries, there are few countries in Africa, or maybe in the world, that are part of more than 3 transboundary waters. And as you could see before, we are part of 6 transboundary water bodies. And of course, we supply water to those countries. And we need, I mean, to the transboundary waters, and we need really to conserve and to preserve our waters and to restore them in order to make sure that there's a continuity and a preservation in the transboundary waters. Okay, that was my presentation for today, guys. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm open to questions, if any. Thank you, Isabel.
Thank you, Alice, for the presentation. And now that we went to Europe and then to Africa, we will go to South America with my presentation and after with Enrique. Just a second, I'm going to share my screen again. Okay. So in my presentation, I'm going to talk about the public participation in the La Plata Basin. This is also something related to my PhD research that I'm just about to to defend my thesis on Friday. So I'm quite excited for that. So regarding the La Plata is the second largest transboundary basin in South America. It only loses to the Amazon basin. And the La Plata is shared by Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Bolivia, and Uruguay. Most of the basin, it is located in the La Plata, in Brazil. And for example, a considerable part of the Paraguay is inserted in the La Plata region. Almost all the country is located there. And the La Plata is the most industrial and populated region in South America. We have the biggest cities of the region in the La Plata. We have São Paulo, Asunción, and Buenos Aires. São Paulo is the biggest city and one of the only megalopolis that we have in South America. And in terms of the water cooperation, the European countries, they started their discussions in terms of how they should do the management and the cooperation over the shared resources during the 60s and the 70s. So they have the main river organization that is the Sique Plata, and they also have a water cooperation treaty that is called the La Plata Basin Treaty. That is the main agreement that we have in place in terms of water cooperation and management. In terms of the institutional and organization architecture of the La Plata Basin, this is the whole structure. So we have the La Plata Basin Treaty that I just mentioned. Then we have SIC, that is the main river basin organization. Then we have FONPLATA, that is the financial mechanism for the development of the basin. We also have the Intergovernmental Committee of the Paraguay-Paraná Waterway. And we have other bilateral and multilateral organizations that exist within the La Plata Basin area. And in terms of the relation to SIC, the RBO, we have the meeting of the Foreign Minister of the La Plata Basin and the General Secretary. These are the two main decision-making bodies that we have in the basin. So all the decisions that are taken with these two bodies, they are applied to the whole basin. Oh, I'm sorry for that. So in terms of the public participation in the La Plata Basin, if we look in the La Plata Treaty, we don't have a explicit mention that public participation is something relevant and is something that the countries should try to do. So we don't have this this term in the treaty. And this wasn't something that was even discussed among the countries until the development of the framework program in the start of the 20s. So in 2001, they started with the development of the framework program, and they identified that public participation was something that was lacking in the La Plata Basin. So most of the discussions started with the framework program, and the countries, they agree that they had to develop this area, and they also had to create some programs to ensure the presence of the basin stakeholders in the execution of activities and other decision-making process within the basin. And with that in mind, they started 4 pilot projects that focus also in the public participation in the La Plata. So we have the conservation of biodiversity in the Paraná River, the hydro environmental alert system, the resolution of conflicts in the Quaraí River Basin, and the control of the pollution and erosion in the Picomayo River Basin. And what they saw with these pilot projects was that as soon as the public was allowed to participate in consultations, in the development of programs, in activities, the efficiency of the project was better, and they achieved a greater level of success. So this is something that they are trying to implement now in the whole basin. And another initiative, besides the pilot project, was the creation of the Public Participation Fund. With these funds, they started 12 social environmental projects that incorporated the local communities, academics, researchers, private sector, with projects that consider environmental education as something really important to the project, as well as communication components in all the projects. But so far, what we have in the La Plata is that with the funds and with the pilot projects, that they have created a better bilateral interaction between the countries. But so far, we still face different levels of public participation in water management between the Hispanic countries. Most of the participation remains in terms of the information, consultation, and discussion level. And this demonstrates that the central government still plays a fundamental role in decision-making. So we don't have public involvement in the decision-making levels, this highest level of public involvement in water management. This is something that was not achieved in the La Plata Basin so far. And this is my presentation. So thank you all. If you have any questions, just send the message in the chat, and we can also discuss it during the breakout rooms. And now, Enrique.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for having me. Today, I will talk a bit about civil actors' role in transboundary waters management. And for that, I will use the case of the Quaraí Basin in the Brazil-Uruguay border as an example. And that was the subject of my undergraduate research that's funded by the SNPq, and that I just finished the first set of results last month. Well, the Quaraí Basin is located on the Brazil-Uruguay border, and as I just said, and is a sub-basin of the La Plata Basin. And there are some conflicts for water use in this area, especially involving the rice producers, which are the group with the most significant water demands on the site. And besides that, the region has some challenges with extreme hydrological events, such as intense floods in urban areas and sedimentation of water courses. And the water is managed on a broader view by the SIC, La Plata SIC, but also have some more specific institutions in the area that are working bilaterally between Brazil and Uruguay. And that's the case of the 2 local basin committees, one in each country, and that are in constant contact with each other. And they also provide a regional forum of discussion for the water users from both countries. And because of its characteristics, both the challenges it faced and the pre-existing local institutions, the area was selected to be one of 3 that served as a stage for a project on cooperative water management with civil actor society. There are parts of the pilot projects that Isabella just talked about. And this project specifically is the part of the framework program. The framework program, as Isabella said, also is run by the SIC, and it has some goals on sustainable management of the water of the Plata Basin. And for tackling the issues and challenges to make the water management more sustainable, the program divided some tactical areas to act on, one of which is the cooperation with civil society. In this context, several projects were implemented around the basin to build and bridge a bridge and dialogue with civil actors and local communities on transboundary water management. One of the projects was implementing the Pilcomayo and Paraguay River conflicts in Argentina, that you can see here in the map with the brown circle. Seven other projects were implemented in the Paraguay and Paraná river conflicts, that is in the Argentina and Paraguay border, that you can see in the purple circle. And 4 were implemented in the Quaraí basin between Brazil and Uruguay, that is located in the red circle in the map. One of these was called the River Workers Act for the Care and Conservation of the River, which I study, and I will try to give you some insights about what I learned from it. These projects I'm studied took place in the cities of Artigas in Uruguay and Quaraí in Brazil, and involved the fisher community in Brazil and the sand and rock extractor workers from Uruguay. As you can see in this satellite image, here in the bottom is Artigas in Uruguay, and up in the image is Quaraí in Brazil. And as you can also see, the river is the natural border between the countries, and as you can also see, it's a very agricultural use of the land around it. And the goal of this project was to engage the local community in a conservationist approach to the Quaraí River and build a transboundary cooperation with the civil actors from the area, especially those whose income depends on the river. And some of the activities of the project included cleaning and reforestation, joining forts on the riverbed, meeting between workers from both countries, and workshop with the community. I talked with some participants of the project, both in the Uruguayan and the Brazilian side, and from these conversations, I identified 2 significant challenges for the civil society participation in water management in the Quaraí Basin. The first is the integrating the civil society with the institutions. Despite the institutionality of the region, it lacks representation of the community. And as I said earlier, the rice producers, especially from the Brazilian side, are the actors with the most prominent water demand in the area, and they happen to be the most powerful actors as well. And looking at the history of the development of the local institutions, such as the local basin committees, the rice producers invested a significant amount of money on it, and this gives them more extensive bargain power in the decision about the management of the water. And because of that, they are free to act in their own interest a lot of the times. For example, there were accusations of rice producers collecting water from the river indiscriminately from spots where they would kill fish that were reproducing, which can be very dangerous for the species. And this creates tension, especially with the fisher community, which seeks to protect the fish population, since if they reduce a lot, their job would be at risk. And the imbalance of power, however, makes the fisher community's demand seems less important in the institutional arena, and the fisher community still have the civil association. They have a civil association, which gives them an organized voice on this question. But the extraction workers from Uruguay, on the other hand, don't have even that, don't have a civil organization, don't have an organized association to make their which make the demands less, and here I'm using quotation mark, but makes them less important in the institutional arena. And in fact, that lack of organization for a extended period prevented them to even recognize themselves as a group and to organize their demands as a group. And there also are many barriers to organizing a civil association. And here I'm talking about bureaucratic barriers such as expensive fares, legal obstacles. And as I will tell you in a while, the project helped with some of these issues, but there is still a large road ahead. The other challenge is and this is perhaps very particularly of the nature of transboundary management, is that some cultural and legal difference between the two sides. Perhaps some of you were wondering why I keep on talking about Brazilian fisher and community and the Uruguayan extractors. And that's because there is no fishing community in Uruguay and there is no extract workers in Brazil. And this comes from the fact that under Brazilian laws, it's illegal to remove rocks and sand from the river. And from Uruguayan rules, it's illegal to fish. So as you can see, this creates a conflict between the two countries. And Brazil army members, for example, had jailed some Uruguayan workers before. And this creates a kind of a diplomatic instability in the region in the past, for example. And the project created a bargaining arena where Uruguayan and Brazilian could negotiate and listen to each other to tackle this kind of issues. And the Uruguayan side presented studies that show that the extractor works is not aggressive to the river, that Brazil will argue that extracting sand would be a problem to the depth of the river, for example. But however, the study showed that the sand comes from upstream, which means that it resects after extraction if so the river has always the same depth if the extraction is done correctly. So the persecution for Uruguayan workers ended. And this is a good example of how discussion forums can bring civil demands to be debated, especially in a transboundary context. But despite the challenges, the project also highlighted some great opportunities for civil actors' role in water management. It built a transboundary community with the dialogues between Brazilians and Uruguayans, and these groups recognizing themselves as similars in the basin. And this created a network between them, which was especially relevant for the Uruguayan workers that after got in contact with the Association of Fishermen from Brazil, started to recognize themselves as a class. They still don't have a civil association, and that's mainly because of the challenges I said earlier, but they want to, and they are working for it. And these new forms to engage and cooperate could potentially give more power to these civil actors in water management in the basin. And they started to recognize that they are important actors and they have a very important knowledge that is essential to understand the river and the basin with all its complexities. And this way they started to give more value to their own roles. And I think this shows that the power of cooperation and dialogue to engage the communities. And from this, even new possibilities started to be discussed between them with new ideas to engage the community and protect the rivers, such as using their knowledge to create ecotourism projects, for example, in the area, and engage the community on it, which could help people, including the youth, to engage more with the basin problems and work for a more sustainable management. And I think think more critically about the role of the water and the basin in their lives. So that was my presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to after the discussion to the breaking room.
Thank you, Henrique, for your presentation. And now, Chin. Henrique, you have to stop sharing your screen.
I think it's fine. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, my name is Tim. I'm the coordinator of the Water Youth Network Water Governance Group, and we'll speak a little bit on participation, focusing on use, as well as the Water Convention. First of all, what we've seen today, and really grateful for the 5 amazing speakers today, is basically what we've seen within our work and Body Youth Network as well. So what is happening today is basically us 6 bundling all the work of all those amazing individuals, which are sitting there in the back in terms of having really this active community of young people working on water, working on transboundary water, which I just wanted to highlight real briefly. Then going back a little bit, into my past in terms of when we initially started to engage on youth in transboundary waters. What basically we found three key points going back, maybe to those 4 years, and which definitely evolved along those years. So starting over the first point in terms of youth in water as well as in transboundary waters is really recognized now, which we can see first of all in the official statements that youth can really meaningfully contribute to water cooperation, which is what we see first of all in the different SDGs, where we really see young people being highlighted as important actors on a really implementation stage then as well. Furthermore, if we go even a little bit further back into 2015, 2018 on the UN Security Council resolutions, basically highlighting this as well, and therefore building these foundations towards young people as well as civil society then being recognized, furthermore even in the transboundary space. So as said before, building on this foundation, what we then personally found in engaging with young people on a transboundary scale is basically that you have to make it personal. What's that going to mean? Basically what we are looking for on a transboundary level, specifically when we speak on cooperation, as well as then moving away from those old-fashioned zero-sum games, is really having established trust between the two parties. And what we found within our specific works on transboundary water governance, as well as within our overall work as Water Youth Network, as a global network, is that this best works when people really, first of all, work together, and then in an even further step, really had those in-person, face-to-face meetings through presentations, World Water Weeks, whatever you want to call it. This really, elevates the level of trust as well as then persistency, which more or less leads us to the third point in terms of cooperating. So here, super important, make it personal, build up this trust. And then, as introduced before, persistency, last topic on this one, which is basically what we see super often as well in our work, that institutions come and say, okay, you young people, would you want to speak or present something on transboundary cooperation, youth in transboundary waters, or so on, which is on the one hand a super nice opportunity, as we see here today, and I think everybody is enjoying it, presenting their research. On the other hand, if we want to set up real dialogue, continuous dialogue, we just need more persistency in terms of really having then longer term projects, or really ongoing projects in terms of continuous bringing young people or civil societies together across borders, which is, I think, for example, Youth for the Rhine is making a beautiful example of really building up those connections over time. Just to break all of this a little bit more down and really clarifying the case for youth, I'm just going to really briefly draw on a concept out of the water world, which is basically measures applied closer to the source are more effective. And basically what I would like to do is really utilizing metaphor of the river a little bit as something like a metaphor for life. So we are starting really at a young age, somewhere at the source, and then basically everything goes downhill. But seriously, we're starting from the source. And then wander off into different directions, getting different influences, seeing different landscapes, and then if we basically follow this metaphor of the river with life, and then apply this concept to basically say, okay, measures we apply closer to the source are most effective. We automatically have to get back to the younger ages, which is basically what we see here. So basically the case for use is at the beginning of our lives, and this is what we see with students and so on, we are way more open to, first of all, exchanging as well as engaging with other people, as well as we have the possibilities to be super easily connected across borders, often, not always, but many times, as well as young people really still have a way bigger amount of time as well as willingness, which is basically what I see to myself. So given the days back in the studies, there was way more flexibility as well as time to really engage in those on top activities, connecting and so on. So basically, the earlier we start building those connections, building up those trust, we do not have, as people, have all those agencies on our back, which can come from our job, can come from our states and whatever. So therefore, it's way easier to basically, bring the two parts together and then connect, build the trust, and then move forward, which we believe is, overall, maybe one of the most effective ways in building water cooperation, in basically, doing this early on. So therefore, basically main statements, empowering young people as agents of change will have a long-lasting impact, because those people then can cooperate either in their jobs, functions, or just on a civil society level, which is perfectly fine. And more or less reap those benefits late in the early ages. And the earlier, the better, due to those agencies just mentioned. And I think what we wanted to do right now is to challenge a little bit today on the UNECE Water Convention, and we are well aware that that's a little bit challenging. So what we did is really looking at 3 key documents in terms of how is youth represented in the UNECE Water Convention. Basically, first of all, starting off with the provisional agenda for this 9th session. And we had a look at it, and it became evident that neither youth nor civil society is mentioned on the agenda. So it's basically not up there. And public is only mentioned or mentioned within publication, so not as public consultations or so on. On a second step, we really found the FAQ on the roadmap to facilitate the accession process. There is no youth mentioned there as well. And civil society is mentioned under national workshops, which we found on the one hand super interesting, as on the other hand, very beneficial as well. So we have those national workshops, we can consult to a certain extent, but overall, that's basically the only mention in the whole document. And then last but not least, looking a little bit on financials. The contributions and expenditures between 2019 and 2021. Basically, no projects which evidently either supported or funded really as their main focus, either something like youth and transboundary cooperation, or basically civil society, local communities. Became evident for us. What we found, though, is that France and Italy funded junior professionals in the Secretariat, which we believe, on the one hand, is an in-kind contribution. On the other hand, is something, that is definitely super important in having those early on capacity development, as well as mentioned earlier, those early connections between, then again, the states and, their individuals. So in terms of really ideas, which we would like to put up to discussion in the breakout session, and I'm super curious of what we are going to get out of those. We basically had a look at, as the MOP has the possibility to establish working groups, other bodies, whatever it's then going to be, which it deems necessary to enhance the performance or implementation of the work plan. We were thinking of whether it might actually be worth a thought to put a little bit more focus on youth or civil society, could be in terms of a co-working group or whatever, really bringing in those a little bit more bottom-up approaches, as well as grounding the discussion, which we found very often very high political, as well as still a little bit dry in the MOP itself, really grounding those a little bit more. Second aspect could be support in bilateral, multilateral processes, and there we really see big benefits for basically both parties. For example, to support, as the convention, youth groups, local communities, as well as then again in the second step, vice versa, in setting up those bilateral, multilateral dialogues, which could work in terms of a MOU, just like the convention saying, okay, we support you, which then again gives this local community way more political backing to either access their own political leaders or financing, so be it. So really having those support from the convention could be something which is more or less easily done, and then could turn out for a very beneficial for those local communities, as well as we could more or less envision something like an agreement where we have then again awareness raising coming from those either youth or community-led projects on the convention, as well as its benefits. And then last but not least, going a little bit more into this capacity development direction, what we saw of and really thought of was, for example, when we now going back to what was been shared on Youth for the Rhine, basically there is huge interest from youth and local communities in setting up or in becoming active on their river basins and so on. So if we set something up like this, like a really toolkit in setting up organizations, we know that there are toolkits on trans or massive open online courses from CWE on Transboundary cooperation and so on. But like really putting something together, okay, those are the steps you need to take, we can support you, which is something that the organizations in place are super happy to support as well. I think if we can set something up like this, would be super helpful as well, super interesting, and really upscaling those bottom-up ideas into the river basins, as well as then really bringing something on the ground which can lead to change. And I think that's all about the challenges, and super happy to exchange now and really get into the discussion.
Thank you, Jean, for your presentation. And yes, let's exchange. And with this in mind, I will be opening the breakout rooms. I just want to share how this is going to work. So in room 1, we will have Alyssa and Viviana. I will be with Enrique in room 2, and Alice and Tim will be on room 3. And during this breakout session, we prepare some questions that we want you all to address. So first of it is, what is the current role of civil society and local communities in the context of transboundary water governance and cooperation? What are the real-time challenges that are faced by these communities? And what are the barriers that hinder their effective and meaningful participation? And finally, how can young people within these communities foster transboundary water cooperation? So what are the opportunities that are being offered to young people, and to what extent these opportunities are elevating the voice of civil societies and the local communities? These are just some guiding questions that we want to discuss during the breakout rooms. And please feel free to open up your mic, sharing your insights, your perspectives. You can turn on your video if you feel comfortable. And please enjoy it. Let me stop sharing and open up the breakout rooms. Okay, you can choose to join the room. It's open.
Hey there.
Hi, Tim.
How did you like it?
Yeah, it was good. It's good, actually.
It's always good when it's over as well. I think, should we maybe wait for 1 or 2 minutes and then just jump for another room?
Yeah, sure. Let's wait for a minute or two.
Because I think since we were dropping people towards the breakout session, if we maybe then stay with 10 people and 6 of them is us, we can rather just like have one big discussion than breaking it down.
Okay.
How are you actually? Oh.
I'm okay. I'm good. Back in Cam.
Welcome.
Netherlands, Germany, or some parts of the globe?
Yeah, currently back in Germany. Yeah.
Okay.
Sarah, can you hear us?
Hi, Tim and Alice. I'm sorry, I seem to have issues with my camera. It was working 5 minutes ago.
No worries at all. No worries at all.
Hi, Sarah.
So, yeah, I can't make it work. I'm sorry. It's a pity because it's a bit, well, nicer just to be able to see each other.
But yeah, I think specifically over the last now it's nearly 2 years now, everybody got used to it as well, no? In terms of speaking into the void. Perfect. So, Sarah, where are you located?
I'm currently, let me try. I'm currently in Geneva. I'm actually working for the Water Convention.
Oh, okay, nice.
And well, I found the whole event super interesting because, yeah, here it is. So you want and I really found, well, I'm originally maybe an explanation from the Rhine basin.
Okay.
So I think this is a really the presentation from on the Rhine was really great because I wished like when I was a bit younger something like this existed. And then I also really liked your suggestions on what can the convention do to improve youth involvement. Because I think in general we're quite a young team actually.
Yeah.
With women also, which is not that common. But I definitely think that
in transboundary waters, no? I think it's actually super common in transboundary waters. Or at least within Water Youth Network as well, and within IHE Delft and so on. Like it's
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting because I would say still it depends because maybe more in organization, I would agree, but within national representations.
Yeah, agreed. So maybe a little bit more the research bubble. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and maybe one more point is that I work more specifically on reporting under the convention and on SDG indicator 652. So it's the indicators that is monitoring transboundary cooperation. And actually we were thinking about, well, the 3 topics that are gender inclusion, youth and civil society organization, and also indigenous people. And looking at all the national reports that we receive worldwide, it's quite good that we see some examples where youth are included, for instance, in working groups. I'm thinking, well, actually Cameroon mentioned it, for instance. But there's still quite few basins in the world. I think for Europe, it's mainly the Shell Basin that mentioned it, and then in the South African region also. But when we think in general, like there's quite few reports also that included civil society organization as a consultation when they prepared the report that basically the status of where they stand in transboundary water.
I think also might be, if it's like in Cameroon, there's some information you don't always have, or civil society, like, I mean, it's mostly the government that's in charge of reporting to UNECE or other international bodies. So of course, youths are simply working on their own, and you can easily have the means from the government. Even you have to work on your own, then hope that the little things you're doing has a bigger impact or a bigger effect in the future. So maybe I think one of the solutions that UNECE may take in order to pick up more voices is have an open forum where every organization, be it official, legalized or not, can really give the voice and maybe show proofs of what they've been doing this far. Because in Cameroon, as I said earlier, maybe if you heard my presentation, civil society and youth especially are doing great in terms of transboundary water. But here, since we can tackle transboundary water directly, that implies, I mean, many governments and people and everything, we can go there without authorization from the government. But then we can start working on our different waters close to us, and that also has a direct impact on the transboundary water. Tim Riley said in his presentation, is the different water bodies, the different sources that form the big transboundary waters that run around different countries. So that's how we're working, and you've chosen the path of entrepreneurship, that's social entrepreneurship or for production or business. But many people have chosen the path of entrepreneurship, which is showing effects, which is showing, in fact, is really good what you've been doing this far. And some of our rivers have really decreased in terms of water bottles. So sometimes you used to walk on the street, you see a whole river that used to be, I mean, yes, it had its color, but you just see bottles floating everywhere, especially during the dry season. And of course, we suffer the effects, and the transboundary waters also have it. And Cameroon being part of 6 transboundary basins, that's really much. I can imagine how impactful we can be on those if we don't take care of our waters. Yeah. Hello, Mark.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Hope you too.
In your presentation, you were talking about making something out of plastic. I didn't quite get that. What did you make?
There's an NGO, a company that the name is Madiba. They make boats, that's boats for fishing, out of plastic bottles. Yeah, we get rid of the plastic bottles from the river bodies around and transform them into boats, which in turn fishermen use to go into the rivers and for their daily activities. And sometimes when there's flooding, some people use it in order to run away from the flooded areas. So it has a great deal, and it's really created another form of circular economy around some villages.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Very unrelated, but Alice, you should look at the World Water Quality Alliance. There's a plastics work stream. And right now the plan is to have a pilot project on the Rhine, but it would be interesting to add social entrepreneurship with plastic management there.
Yeah, a great idea.
And hi everyone, I'm just joining in. We were in another discussion room, but it was all people that knew each other, so we figured we should disperse. It's nice to meet you all.
Okay.
I'm not a youth, but I'm young at heart. I'm learning more on this side event than I did in any other side event, though.
Welcome.
Thank you.
How many did you join?
I'm in the Northeast United States, so these start at 4 o'clock in the morning for me. So I've tried to do 3 of them yesterday, but at the third one, I was at work. It was hard to follow, but it's okay.
Yeah, we had the same with Enrique. We got him out of bed to present super early as well. But this is what happens.
I used to be based in Minnesota. It's tough. Now I'm in Europe, so it makes it easier.
You graduated from Austin, I see.
I did a while back.
Yeah.
So, do you have ties to Texas?
No, I'm in Boston. I'm near Boston.
Oh, okay.
I have a question that's unrelated, but this seems like a good group to ask, which is I'm new to the UNECE process, and I've studied water and river basins, etc., and collaboration and integration, the nexus. And I just finished a degree late in life at SOAS in England. But in the ECE process, I don't see the United States doing anything. I mean, I don't understand why the US is not involved at all, even though they're a member of the UNECE. I've Googled, I can't find a thing. Does anybody know the politics or something behind that, or what's going on? They're not a member of you know, the water, the Transboundary water.
Maybe I can add on this.
Yeah.
So, so basically, well, the US are part of UNECE, but they're not parties to the Water Convention.
Correct.
So currently the Water Convention has, no, we increased to 44 parties, but not yet from the American continent, actually. And actually the US, so even if they're not parties, they're actively participating, and they're participating under the activities of the convention. So they do participate in some of the, well, meetings, exchange of experience, thinking especially with with both commission, with in general, with the Boundary Commission with Canada, and also with on the south with the SILA with Mexico. They do, for instance, share their experience. And then, for instance, as I mentioned just before, I'm mainly I work for the water unit, so part of it for the convention, but also on the activities on monitoring the SDGs and one of their indicators. And for instance, in that area, the US have also participated to the monitoring exercise, and also to the different activities and workshops that we have had, for instance. Okay. So it's basically in the sense of the convention that not all the countries that participate are parties. We do welcome further ahead, but I think overall it would be great if the US would become a party, but this is a
true, but
a long term. Well, this is a broader.
even beyond the Water Convention, which I understand that they're not they haven't signed to that, but even any activity in the UNECE, I don't see much on the internet when I try to find something. But anyway, I was just wondering if there was something I was missing, because there's nothing to see on Google.
And maybe then one stuff is also depending on the moment. Well, for instance, in the history, in the development of the convention, like Canada and the US were much more active even within the drafting of the text of the convention, for instance.
Thank you. No, I did go and see, you know, what agreements they have with, say, Canada and Mexico. And I didn't find much there either, but there are, of course, water basin communities, associations, and things like that. So it is happening in one form or another, but I haven't seen much yet. I'm still looking.
They do have a good amount of legal arrangements with Canada and Mexico, and the establishment of international commissions as well. And there also is some legal precedent in each other's laws for holding binding rulings from one country to another. But I'd be happy to follow up with you on that.
That'd be nice, thanks. Did you happen to see the side event on law, on regulating? Regulating can mean many things in water, so they missed the law part when they were advertising, but when they actually did the presentation, it was mostly about transnational laws. How do you match the laws up with each country? Did anybody see that? That was yesterday. No.
Fortunately, didn't catch it, but I know it's quite a common challenge in transboundary basins.
Very complicated. My takeaway from that was there were a lot of laws feeding into transnational cooperation, but it's very involved. And this was also regarding dams, but laws regarding dams. It was very so.
Yeah, it's certainly, I think, an interesting challenge and something that's broached quite a bit by the UNECE as well, the convention and membership. But would have been an interesting side event to catch.
Can I maybe make a concrete suggestion, because I was well reflecting on what you suggested as how the convention could improve. And then also on Alice, the concrete aspect on the ground, but also the limitations that is through national government. And I think indeed, like the Secretariat of the Water Convention, what we do is that we respond to what our parties, the governments, national, are indeed saying. So hence there's still a limitation, but I mean, one possibility would also be to engage a few maybe national authorities that would really advocate to further include youth in the program of work or in the activities of the convention, and having this interconnection between the different levels. I think this would also further push for a better inclusion of youth and civil society.
Agreed.
Yeah.
You call yourselves youths, but I've been looking at your bios. You're more accomplished than I am in your mid-20s. You've done very well. Congratulations.
I'm not in my mid-20s, but we consider youth 35 and under at Water Youth Network. But thank you.
When in doubt, guess down.
Exactly. No, but going back to what you just shared, Sarah, I think this would be super interesting. Would you maybe be interested in setting up like a follow-up call on this one, whether we can like think it through and maybe set up something like it?
Sure. Yeah.
Because then we have a little more time. Maybe, yeah, we can elaborate. Okay, what is possible, what is not possible, and then see what we can move forward.
Yeah.
Perfect. Then I'm just going to reach out to you through your email address, which I think we have to the registration. Maybe a couple of weeks back, because I guess now it's super busy. But yeah, we're definitely going to take it forward then.
I would love to join that call if that's okay. I think it'd be a very interesting discussion.
And I think specifically on Youth of the Rhine, we could make it tangible as well.
That's true. Yeah, I think we see a good commitment, at least from the Dutch government, and I imagine it might be a nice avenue to push through.
Yeah, and we have contacts there. The Germans are still a little slow or bureaucratic, but I think we can send some emails out there as well.
Well, Alice, Germany is slow, but it has hopes. This way, I don't think nothing is moving, so I wouldn't say there's anything happening. Maybe that's in 2035. I don't know. But then for now, there's really nothing. I mean, we hear things. We hear Cameroon has done this. He has. But sometimes you're like, really? When did it happen? Because you don't really see anything visible, and there's a visible, tangible looking around. You just hear what's been said. And sometimes there's really no place can really go in and ask for concrete information. But there are many challenges on the ground in the field, so many. But then we hope through such side events, we can really have a platform to express and maybe find possible solutions and way out where civil society and youth, of course, can bring out their voices and somehow have some independence in order to have more impacts on the environment without directly passing through the government.
We're talking about river basins. That was very interesting, where the Rhine is involved with like 9 different countries, and then what country was involved with had touched something like 9 different basins or something like that. Was it Cameroon?
Cameroon, yeah, Cameroon touched 6 basins.
We're talking, I mean, the convention talks about transboundary cooperation, but the question I put in the chat was, is there a movement towards aquifers or river basins seeing themselves as a single community? Any sense of that, rather than individual countries cooperating? Is there any sense developing of we are one community based, a community of the basin, if you will? I mean, you can be part of different communities, you know, of course, your own country, etc. But do you know the answer to that?
I don't know if I have the best answer to that, but I think you sometimes see that in more the civil society, the sense of community. I think there's always going to be decisions made at a country level because it can be a bit securitized when you're talking about water resources. But you also have countries with really good relationships where they don't necessarily see what they're doing as diplomacy, Germany and Austria, over their thermal aquifers being an example. And so they might say they see it more as a community. But I think you're always going to have a country dynamic still, at least in my opinion.
I mean, there are proponents of development. There's the individual, there are communities, and there are institutions. And our focus during this conference is usually about institutions, institutional relationships. But at a grassroots level, someone was talking about bottom-up approaches, which is which is a sense of community. And there are interactions everywhere between your civil society community and your governments. In fact, one is representing the other. So the convention is talking about you know, being an avenue towards peace. Well, towards that, it would be like, well, are we starting to see each other as one community? And that would be a move towards a peaceful arrangement. So
maybe just from my personal experience, well, just very quickly, I know that a few years back there was this from the civil society, this basin passports, and I thought that was great. And then beyond water, I mean, we're always limited by the national governments, but beyond water, for instance, on the Rhine and more slightly between the regions, there's a Euro district between Strasbourg and the region nearby in between France and Germany. So it's not only maybe water sector, but going beyond the water sector that could also help to see the dynamic, the economic dynamic.
Negotiate with them. And something that really made them trust the project was because one of the coordinators of the project was like as a part of the community. So they felt closer to it. They felt they could engage with the project in a safe way. So that personal thing, I think that Viviana was saying, is very important.
No, thanks, Eric.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming back to the main room. How was the discussion in our group team?
I think it was super interesting, and I will maybe give one more minute to Sarah, because you were just finishing your thought, to maybe get everybody back into it. I think, yeah, if everybody's fine with that, we can.
Yeah, of course.
I think I almost managed to wrap it up, but this was basically on the question on the sense of community by basin. And it was reflecting on the fact that, well, on one hand, just for background, I do work for the Water Convention, but on the other hand, I also come from the Rhine River Basin. And for me, this has a really, really strong importance. But this is on a personal level. And then I was looking into the fact that, for instance, within this Upper Rhine region, like we did started the Interreg European project. Then currently there's this Euro district between Alsace and Baden-Württemberg from the other side. So my reflection was mainly like to go, well, there's this, I have this impression at a personal level that there's this sense of integration also through the common cultures that we share within the basin. And it's also going beyond water, not only having, and beyond water and integrating maybe the different economic aspects to have this sense of community, like beyond borders and within a region that is often sharing the same issues or development even, because being on a similar side. And also considering that the region that I'm talking about was indeed a region of conflict, considering that the nationality changed a lot, but now it has been a factor of indeed further dialogue, cooperation and development to have this integrated together. That's mainly a personal thought.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for sharing your final thoughts about it. I wish that I was able to be part of the discussions. In our group, we had a discussion about the engagement of local communities, especially the indigenous communities, and how can we take into consideration the experience from the youth from the Rhine and apply to other basins. And another thing that we discussed was about trust, because some stakeholders within the basin, they don't trust enough in the government and the state to be part of the discussion. And Henrique was sharing his experience with the local communities in Uruguay and Brazil, that they don't trust the government and they don't want to be part of the discussion because of that. So any final reflection that someone wants to add to this session? Okay, so as the host today, I want to thank you all for the brilliant presentation that we had today. We had some insights from Europe, from Africa, and from South America. And we have seen that public participation in Transboundary River Basin and management and governance, as well as cooperation, is still in a development stage. So we have a lot to do to achieve this high level of engagement. But for water management to be effective, integrate not only with the 2030 agenda and with the SDGs, as well as the efficiency, sustainability, and equity goals that water management has, we need to think about ways to engage different stakeholders in the management of transboundary waters. This is something that we still have to do. And I hope that you all have enjoyed the event and that we were at least able to call attention to the topic, and that the Water Convention will look into our suggestions and maybe do something about it. And thank you for your time and for joining us today. And please follow Water Youth Network on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We will share the recordings and you can watch it later today. So thank you all for joining.
Thank you very much, Isabella, for moderating as well. Amazing job as always. And yeah, thanks everybody. Have a good one.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody. Bye.